we have a special breakfast speaker this morning, Ferdinand Schwerter, who I've known for many years, who produces, his company is Movemen, and he produces what is very clearly the best math typesetting tools for InDesign. And if you ever have to create math, anything more than a fraction, then you definitely want to take a look at math tools from Movemen, because as you'll see, it's extremely rich, and more importantly, it integrates really clearly and cleanly into InDesign, and that's something that we just have never seen before. So I'm going to hand it over to Ferdinand, and he's going to show you his math tools.
Thank you very much, David. Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a very nice first day, or yesterday, or if you arrived today, had a good travel. I want to show you math tools today from a slightly different perspective than I did in the past. I'm not talking that much about the editing of equations, but more how they integrate within a workflow. You all should have this small flyer in your bag, actually. And this is one, like the back side of this flyer. It gives you a slight and a brief overview of what Math Tools is. It is not a tool that allows you to calculate something. So it's not like a spreadsheet calculation tool. Sometimes people ask me if they just could create a spreadsheet and get something calculated. That's not possible. It's really a typesetting tool for equations in InDesign. And the way it works with InDesign is slightly different than the competitor tools. It's not using an external editor. It's not using inlines. It really is using the InDesign composition engine to create the equations, to compose the equations. And it introduces something that is called a math style. It's just like any other style that you know in InDesign, like the character style or paragraph style. It has its role. The role is to compose or to specify how to compose different expression types. You can see in this page, you can see a number of math expressions. They are typeset in InDesign. They're not coming from an external system, but they were really, these documents, it's an Italian school book, math school book, like 1,000 pages. And they did all the 10,000 plus equations with math tools. And so they created, and this is just a very small fraction part of it. And they created a number of math styles to achieve that, to achieve the typesetting or the composition. And I want to show you in a very short way how the styles are actually working. Just to make you understand, they are working exactly as you would expect. They're like character styles, so you apply them to an expression, like a fraction. You can see here, you have an expression, a fraction, you have a fraction here, and they all refer to the same fraction style. Well, you have a superscript style, or superscript expression here, and here, and here, slightly hidden, and here, inside, nested inside a fraction, and you have one here, and you have it here. And you have two different superscript styles. You can have as many styles that you want or you need. But here, the designer decided to move the superscript 2 slightly closer to the closing parenthesis. It's a designer's decision, for whatever reason they did it. But that's why they couldn't use the normal or the normal superscript style. They created a copy of it and just changed a setting inside the style to make the superscript satellite a little bit closer to the closing parenthesis. The actual content inside the expression, inside your expression or sub-expressions, are formatted using InDesign, using character styles, using paragraph styles. So the font is picked out of the paragraph styles or the applied character styles as you need it. So that means if you have special symbols and you have your own font, hopefully Unicode-based, then you could just use your own character style to select the font and insert your symbol as you need it. There's no need to do any kind of configuration other than that. And if you change the font in your document for any reason, or the point size, you simply add, you simply refresh or recompose the equations because they pick up the change automatically. And that way it looks the same as your body text. And the composition itself of the sub-expression, of the entire expression here, is done by the InDesign composition engine. There's no extra composer there, so it should be very close to what you expect. But today, as I said, I do not want to go into the details of the equation composition or the equation editing. I want to talk about the way InDesign and math tools integrate in workflows. And especially, I want to talk about the word import and the way to export, if you have a style document with math tools equations, to export them to EPUB in various ways. And what you do not find here, the next step to export it, to make it usable in Kindle. And there's one thing that people, our customers, are asking me quite a while, and I'm trying to implement it in some way, is to add MathML to PDF, to make it accessible. Okay, so let's switch to InDesign. I have a small document that I created to show you the two major equation editors in Word that are in use today. In 2007, or around 2007, Microsoft implemented their own equation builder. It's an integrated equation tool. You can see it has a specific appearance. It's really integrated in the product itself, and you're editing directly inside Word. And then the famous math type, which is used to be the standard equation editor. You can use it in many different applications. It's a standalone application and integrates based on embedded objects. That means if you do not have math type installed, it's an external application, you will get a warning that you cannot edit the equation. So that's the two type of equations that you will get if you import a Word document with equations that you get from an author into InDesign. Let's see what that actually means. So I created a very simple template document to make it easier to open new documents. And I'm using InDesign place functionality to place just the document that I just showed. Now, that's the result of placing that document. Let's take a look at the result of the equation builder. Equations import. Well, they're just lost. And they're really lost. They are gone. There's no reference anymore, some hidden part which you could recover. They're just gone. They're lost in the document, from the document. And that means if you're importing documents that might have those kind of equations, you probably not even realize that you're figuring out that you're losing those equations because there's no hint. And if you don't read all the text and find it from the text, you would not see it. From the math type equations, I need to be fair. If you would have the math type plugin installed, it would look slightly better. But they are coming in as embedded equations, as embedded images. And they will print the way you can see here. So if I create an EPF now, it will go into the PDF exactly this way. If you export this document to EPUB, it would create an image out of it, and it would just look the same way. But that's not quite a solution. That means the InDesign import does not understand those equations. It can't just deal with them. Math Tools, as an equation editor, offers import for those equation formats. While you could enable Math Tools for that document and try to convert those embedded equations, and it will work in a number of cases. It could just that they are understood by Math Tools, but it's not always the case. It depends on how math type wrote the equation into the document. So if you create it on Macintosh, Word for Macintosh, it would be slightly different, and it's more likely that you would not be able to convert it this way. That's why we developed a tool or an import wrapper. It is not a Word import. It is really just a wrapper around the existing InDesign import functionality. So we are selecting the same document again, and it is preparing the document before actually handing it over to the InDesign import provider. And now we're placing it, and you can see the equations are coming in. And they're looking slightly different, but that's the price you have to pay because it's a conversion. It's not understanding the equation directly, it's really a conversion. And that makes it difficult to have it appear exactly the same way. But you can see they are essentially the same equations that are in the document and formatted in a similar way. But here, for example, it did not format correctly, so you could change the style. That's the kind of stuff you would always do after importing a document, or you could prepare it in a different way so that it imports better at the first step. But in the end of the day, you have your equations. They are formatted. They are text. You can see it here. They are live text. They have character styles applied. As you can see here, you can do whatever you would do with text now. So that was the first part, getting equations in Word documents into InDesign and have them available in an editable way. The next step would be to actually export them to the different formats. Typically, customers expect PDF, and that's obvious, and EPUB, and reflowable EPUB, if possible at all. I guess you believe that it's trivial to export a fixed layout EPUB because the equations are text and all the other text work with fixed layout EPUB. You should expect that the equations are working as well, so I'm saving the time. And the challenge is the reflowable EPUB. So let's just export the document as is to a reflowable. I'm saving it. Just give it a name. Ported doc. Okay, now I'm exporting it as simply as a reflowable document. And there's no need to, you could do any settings that you like, it wouldn't change the result. This is the result that you get. And why will you get that? Well, InDesign does not understand the structure, like the real structure of the equation. So they are just taking whatever you see in your story view, and if you compare this to the iBooks result, it is pretty close to that. And it's just really taking the characters out. The composition features that you have in the EPUB are not so good compared to InDesign. That's why it's not showing it in exactly the right way. Okay, so that's not quite a solution. We would need to do it in a different way to make it usable for people. So we introduced a while ago the support for MathML, and now with this MathML, with this way, we encode all the equations as a MathML snippet. That requires the EPUB reader to understand MathML and to be able to render MathML, which is not that problem anymore today. It's getting better, but there's still not every EPUB reader understands MathML. So I'm saving it. There's nothing else I need to do. And as you can see, it's not automatically opening that resulting EPUB. And the reason is that if you're setting up this option here, iBooks would, or the reader would automatically open the document when InDesign is ready with it, or has done with it. But that would not allow us to post-process the document. That's why I cannot automatically open iBooks or Viewer right now. But the document is created in the place we specified. I just have to go there. It's the MathML EPUB. And what you can see, the equations are there. They are formatted. You can reflow. It's a reflowable EPUB, so it's reflowing as good as it can. You can see from the selection that it is text, and it is not actually text. It's an object there, and it's rendered by the iBooks reader now. So the result, like this wrong rendition here, is not due to the way math tools generate the MathML, but it's a bug in iBooks readers today. There's a number of other strange issues like the parentheses. Sometimes they're drawn correctly and sometimes they're not. So whatever the reason is. So to prove that this is not based on math tools, I just open the same file in a different EPUB reader, which is Lucifox. You can see it renders this equation in the correct way. So the MathML describes the equation, and the renderer just takes that description and renders it. And some are still buggy, some are missing features, but that will change over a while. So that is one solution. But you will not be able to use that EPUB file for Kindle, because the Kindle conversion process will not take those MathML objects and render them as an image. So what you would need to do is create an image out of it. How would you create an image out of a text range in InDesign during the EPUB export? Well, you wrap it into a frame, and then InDesign creates that image for you. While it would be quite tedious to do that manually for all the equations, there is a functionality in math tools that allows you to do that. You can, I don't know if you can see that. You can just wrap that automatically, and inside it, it's still text. It's really just a text wrapped into a text frame and inlined at the same position. And of course, you can do that for the entire document as well. So if I'm exporting this again as a reflowable EPUB, take this. I'm not specifying anything because in the moment they are wrapped into a frame, the frame gets an object style applied, and that object style has all the HTML settings or EPUB export settings that are needed to achieve that. Now you can see here we have an image. That's an image. Now, while we have still a text here because I did not wrap the other equations into a frame. So the export actually worked, but it's not aligned in the correct way. That's just half the way. And you would need to go into the EPUB to crack it open and change all that positioning manually. That's one of the issues that people had to or were struggling with today. So we are going one step further and created a new wrapper for the export. And this time, so I have to undo this. And I'm exporting this time with image equations. Call it image equations. Okay, what you can see here, it is automatically doing all the wrapping stuff. It's automatically applying all the object styles that are needed and the settings that are needed to make this work. But that's not all. It also post-processes the resulting EPUB to apply the correct vertical alignment. So now the resulting document, they're all images, not MathML anymore, but they're aligned in a way that you would expect it to be. So it is reflowable, as you can see. There are images, they are in the right size, but still, if you, of course, change the font, they are not exactly matching the font anymore because it's a dead end, it's an image. There's another drawback with the image is that once those EPUB readers improve their MathML support or their equation support in general, you will not get a better line breaking or equation breaking because those are images and those are big images, like this one. And if you have a smaller device and you should break across the line, it's just not working with an image. What it does, it tries to resize the image, to scale the image as much as it can, and it works, but it's not exactly nice. And for accessibility, it's not a problem. You would have to provide alt text and so on to make it accessible. While with MathML, the chances are much bigger that you find an AT technology that is actually capable of reading and accessing MathML in the future, not today. Today, there's very limited support for all those functionalities. But if you have an image there, you just, I mean, the content is locked in, and you're not able to improve it later. And that's why MathML is still an option, and you probably will create two EPUBs, one with the image, one with the MathML, or we are thinking about combining that. But it's, I mean, the footprint is really quite enormous. That the question is if you really need it both at the same place. And I didn't find a good way to make it work with the EPUB readers as well. So right now we have two exports, and you can automate that. I have a number of customers who do that. They get the Word content automatically, get all the conversions done, get all their preparations on the Word document done in InDesign, and they export the MathML and EPUB automatically based on scripting. So they can do it in quite a good way. And yeah, so that was the different export options that you can see, that you can get for equations. It still is, the MathML support is still kind of limited, but it's improving. And you can see that if you're using different readers or different XHTML renderer, then you can get different results. But there's just not enough there right now to make it really valuable for people to invest money to create MathML support, unfortunately. Even the big companies like Microsoft and Word and Apple are not investing into the MathML technology, unfortunately. So there was the EPUB export. You can see you can export equations in a way to EPUB that you can even use it for Kindle. But now we go to the PDF side of export. The normal PDF export would be exactly as you would expect. It's a print EPUB, print PDF. Whether or not you're tagging it, I'm just turning tagging on. You get the result. It's text, so it's printed in the way you would expect. Now, from the perspective of accessibility, the tagging that InDesign creates is actually not what you really want, because you can't read an equation this way. It would just not work. No one would be able to understand. So creating that text or exporting that text into the EPUB is not the right way. In the PDF is not the right way. It must be artifacted, and there must be the MathML inserted in a way that it is detected by AT technologies. So let's export it again, but using the new export. It's again just a wrapper. It is not a PDF export on its own. MathML. Okay, I'm not changing anything. I have create tag PDF on. It's 1.6. But you can see it was tagging. It was wrapping the equations again into a frame. Just that's the only way to artifact it. in InDesign right now, and I'm exporting it. So, okay. And it looks the same as the one before. It has the content as you would expect. So it's printing in a high quality. But what it's added, you have a MathML object inside of it. Even though it's not the optimal way it is done right now, it is the only way it can be done with InDesign today. I have filed a feature request, and I really hope that the InDesign team is able to provide a little bit more APIs to tag text ranges with PDF tags so that they can export MathML or like the equation information from InDesign directly. MathTools is ready for it. I think that InDesign itself is ready for it, but the API that we can use as a third-party developer is not yet. So I hope that probably on Friday we will have a talk about that. And what you can see here this is the tag, the structure tag, and you don't have the content anymore here because it's artifacted, but you have the figure, which is, it should be a formula, but the only way I figured out in InDesign to make it a formula, or export it as a formula, is to use the XML tagging or to create an XML structure that has formula as a tag name. But that's not feasible for a lot of workflows. So, and the name figure is hard-coded for all the other export situation in InDesign. So you have everything you need inside the PDF. You can provide technology to read that in a way that people can understand. It will not read the plain content of the equation, but the content is there, of course, but it is an artifact now. So in an ideal situation, you would have a begin equation, and then you would label all those stuff, like a variable, an operator, a number, and in other situations, like here you would say it's beginning a group, and here it ends the group, or the fraction. It would start with the fraction begins, and then would mention the numerator and denominator, and it would tell the fraction ends. And that's the way it should be, but it's not possible today with InDesign. It might be possible to create a plugin for Acrobat to post-process it in some way and add that structure, but just not in InDesign, unfortunately. So I'm through with my time. I'm going back to the presentation. That's what I wanted to show you today. Word import, getting equations into Word, not losing them. All the formatting stuff is done in a way you would do in InDesign anyway for Word documents. And you can export with equations to EPUB in various ways. And you can export the equation information right now to the PDF as well. And I really hope that we get to a point where the correct PDF UA structure that they propose will make it into the PDF by that. Thank you very much. My name is Ferdinand, and just grab me if you want.